Hi there, this is Ryan again with another video. This one's more specifically about Freaks, Geeks, and Asperger Syndrome. A little bit more of a focused critique. Let's see. So essentially the book, I guess I can break it down into its two uses. Its first use, its first objective, is sort of as a biography of a guy with Asperger Syndrome. And its secondary use is, I guess, more of a use as a guide for people with Asperger syndrome, with autism, for parents, for people who just feel like they have trouble fitting in, to sort of understand what's going on in their heads, in their minds, in their emotional shiftings, to try to get a little bit of an explanation, a little bit of something to compare it to. So you've got some level of feeling of normalcy in a way. I'm all for getting rid of the whole stigma on the idea of normalcy and to say, hey, you know what? These are things that are normal for people with Asperger's. And I think that's what this book really does. It really does break down what is a typical Asperger's person, despite the fact that really, when you really come down to it, there's no such thing as a typical Asperger's. It affects everybody differently. Everybody's going to build their own personalities. So really it is a look at one kid's personality and how he deals with his Asperger's syndrome, and maybe some guides for some things that are commonalities in Asperger's syndrome. So we're going to take a quick look at some of the things that he says in here. He talks a lot about fears and adaptations, trouble with obsessions. Obsessions are a big part of the book, and really what people consider obsessions and what people don't. And I think that that's probably one of the parts of the book that I really latched onto is when he was talking about obsessions versus hobbies, or really accepted obsessions versus obsessions that people aren't so ready to accept. When he was talking about, the book is slightly dated, when he's talking about video games and computer games and stuff like that, those are now, I think, a little bit more of an accepted thing to be obsessed about. Video gaming is rapidly becoming an e-sport. Massive multiplayer online role-playing games, first-person shooters have humongous followings. There are even televised events. But he does make a really good point that the obsessions may simply be about things that generally people aren't obsessed about. And the other half of that is that sometimes the obsessions have gone further than people are really comfortable with. For example, he does talk about his own experience computer gaming, Pokemon, Warhammer games, his PlayStation, computers in general, that they aren't necessarily an AS thing, but that they are something that's easy for them to latch onto. And I know myself as an adult, as a computer gamer, as a long-time World of Warcraft player, as a long-time, Pokemon player, this is stuff that's actually pretty typical just for people who aren't bothered by the fact that, it isn't a fad anymore. But it is the kind of thing that is easy to latch onto if you sort of need an obsession, or if you need something to fill a lot of time. It's very easy to latch onto. I don't think that, like he says, it's not just an Asperger's thing. It's really, it can be a hobby. He does talk about his collections, which is interesting. Um, Collecting what I guess most people would consider junk: strings, batteries, broken pencils. Um, which is odd. But there are plenty of people in the world that do collect things, collect stamps, collect action figures, collect cards, collect comics, collect baseball cards, um, collect old newspapers, comic books, mugs, snow globes, bells. I mean, people have collections. This is another thing that isn't weird. It's just he basically talks about the fact that they take it to um, they take it into another level of obsession, and I think that's one of the really interesting things that he dissects in the book is talking about obsession. Um, we are, as a society, already a very obsessive society. Um, there's a huge focus on the stuff you have, the stuff you don't have, the stuff you want, and the stuff that you're buying. Um, so essentially, for him, it came down to something more of a comfort to have the things around him. But I don't think that that's something that's alien to any of us. I think that um, having things, having possessions, is a really key part of our society. Um, I thought that the book was very interesting, very well written, really good um, introverted psychological breakdown. It did seem a little um, too introverted at times because it was very much about him. But at the same time, it totally is a huge achievement for anybody to write a book, especially for a kid to write a book. Um, I'm not going to say that it's a bigger achievement just because he has Asperger Syndrome, though. And I think that's one of the comments on the book that I've liked the least is that a lot of people are focusing on his Asperger's as why the book is an achievement. It really isn't. Just because he has Asperger's does not make the book an achievement. The book is an achievement because it got written, and because it's a really good book in its own right. To say that the book is an achievement because it was written by a person with a disability cheapens the disability, cheapens the quality of the book, and I think cheapens his achievement of writing a book. I mean, most people never write a book, and there's always got to be somebody out there that can. So, I mean, kudos to him, and wrote a fantastic book that's a really good study that I think adults that are studying the field of the autism spectrum maybe haven't pursed quite as well into that arena as he did, having been in it. And even other people who are in it, other Asperger's, other autistic writers, his ability to communicate is really keen. His ability to write is way up there, and his ability to understand what was going on and really truly understand in an objective way what he was doing versus what he was being told was normal. I mean, really keen and on spot. Not just as a writer with Asperger syndrome, but as a writer in general, as a writer studying something which is entirely difficult, slippery, rocky terrain to cover, and I think he covered it really well. So I really commend him for writing the book, just purely based on the merits of the book, not based on the merits of his disability or the disability that he writes about.